Good morning. This is the first of hopefully many videos on building a mobile application using React Native. Essentially, this project is a goal tracker slash to-do list, just kind of bridging the gap between those two pieces of functionality. And I'm hoping to use it for projects like this. I think my theory is you spend a small amount of time each day on something long enough that eventually you can do anything. So I want an app that I can use to quickly show that, I've put effort towards this project over the course of however many weeks or months. So there's been a little bit of work done on this so far. It's just a React Native scaffolding right now. Why don't I just fire it up and show it? So npx React Native start. So I'm just using the React Native CLI to run my start command. Which uses the Metro bundler to compile the project. And then npx React Native run iOS. So this will, interesting. Okay, we got our first problem. So it's going to start the iOS simulator. But it seems like we have a pod issue. So I think this is from me installing this dependency last time I was working on this. So before I can run the project, I'm going to have to show you this, which I believe all I have to do is install the pods in the iOS directory. So if you're coming from a JavaScript background, you're probably more familiar with NPM for Node Package Manager. In the React Native or in iOS ecosystem, there are different tools for that. One of them is CocoaPods. And if you look at it, you just have this pod file, and it defines some of your dependencies. It's a little new for me. I've only been working on React Native for the last 3 months or so. But I do know it's CocoaPods, installing that dependency. So now we should be able to fire up the simulator. And this part takes a little bit. I don't think necessarily because of React Native, but this is a 2013 MacBook Air. So it's chugging along, but I'm looking forward to upgrading that soon. But I can pull up the repository in the meantime. So I just called it milestone action review for the time being. Milestone goal action, which is like a to-do list, and review is this functionality to easily see for a given time frame, how many of your actions were linked to a goal. So there's not very much that's exciting in this project yet. Using Flow for static typing in JavaScript. I'm used to TypeScript, so still not quite familiar with that. Um, yeah, and this is kind of the system I'm using right now. TickTick is kind of like a to-do list app, and I basically have this list of projects that I'm working on. I call it goal action review here. Um, what I'm trying to do is build an MVP and actually have people, people I know that are interested in goal setting to download this app and start using it as quickly as possible. So, I've identified a few milestones that I could hit along the way. Build to-do list using async storage. Can get that into that a little bit more. Goal setting, action goal alignment, and then this is like post MVP, building a backend server, endpoints, and building the database. That's kind of how I'm approaching this right now. Oof, this is chugging along. Should be almost there though. So my thinking behind using async storage. Async storage is it's a package. It basically provides it's an abstraction for Android, it's using a SQLite database. For iOS, it is using it is storing these values in the library application support directory. So I figured instead of, trying to build a backend server and a database and deploying that, figuring out all those complications, like that's just another huge layer preventing me from getting user feedback quickly. So I figured instead, let's just use something that stores it on device. It'll persist the data, so they'll be able to, still be able to create to-dos and goals, but won't really work that well if they're switching between devices yet. But that's the whole point of an MVP is getting this going as quickly as possible. Yeah, I just ordered the new MacBook Air, so I'm excited about that. It's going to take a couple of weeks to get in. In the meantime, I'm going to have to bear with some of these low build times. So I did skip over, how I actually got the project started. Getting the scaffolding up for the React Native application, and you'll see that there is some functionality built in for the to-do list itself already. But in order to actually get the project initialized, this is a great place to start. reactnative.dev/docs/environment-setup. You can use the Expo CLI. I think it's a little simpler. I happen to use the React Native CLI. And right now I'm strictly targeting. Okay, looks like the project is done. Compiling. I'm only targeting iOS. That's all I care about right now. So there is a few additional steps that you wouldn't have to do with Expo for installing Homebrew, Node. You probably would need to install Node for Expo, but Watchman. Yeah, it's a little more involved, but I'd like to understand, what's going on behind the scenes. So I went down this route. So definitely a good place to start. I can put a link to it in the description. Cool. So the debugger for our application is open. That means it's loading the files from our Metro bundler. It should be done. Nice. Okay. It's here. This is where the project is at right now. Sorry, need a little coffee. So you can see you have the ability to write an action, add it to the list. You can mark these as complete or incomplete. But right now, if you reload the device, it just resets to these default actions. And if you just notice, I got the debug menu up here. You can do that on Mac with Command D, or you can simulate shaking the device with Command Control Z to get the same menu. So that's a good way to get the React Native debugger going. You can open up an inspector, and it's not as intuitive as like the web inspector experience with browsers like Chrome, but you do get some insight as to what components are actually being rendered on the page. I'm going to turn that off for now. So for today's session, what can we do? The ability to edit an action, maybe? That could be a good one. So yeah, I'm just trying to take one small piece of functionality at a time and just make steady progress on this every day. So yeah, I think that's a good place to start, is editing these devices. So if we go into the React directory, we have our entry point with app.js. And really, this is all default stuff except for action input, which is a component I've created. Provides some of the default data and is a controlled component with that input form, that input field, and provides the ability to add and toggle an action. The current state is not ideal. I feel like the list and the input could be totally separate parts of the UI, so it might make sense to transition some of this state into the context API, just so it's easily shared across different parts of the component tree, but it's still early days. I'm just trying to get the functionality to a passable state for an MVP. So, into the actions list component. So right now we're just rendering the task description in a text component imported from React Native. We need to be able to tap it and change that value. It's actually pretty tricky. Let's see if there's any tap text to edit. See if there's any results for something like this. at this stage, I'm probably gonna start talking less as I dive into problem solving, but I'll try and keep talking about what I'm thinking and what I'm looking for. Let's just see what the text component actually does, or what kind of prompts it accepts. Accessible, disabled, making me think. If we just think about the experience, right? It could be tap on the text and start editing. Or maybe it's like a 3-dot icon in the right-hand side of this row. I feel like let's just go with that for the moment, just to see what it looks like. So touchable without feedback is just like, let's just take a look at the doc. Touchable without feedback is a component that responds to touch, responds to being pressed. In this case, it doesn't provide any visual indication of visual feedback when it's touched. That makes sense for the status here because we're actually updating the UI in a way that React Native just isn't aware of. But we're going to do something similar here. And I don't have an icon on me, so I'm just going to say can we make this fixed to the right? Now I forget how absolute positioning works on native. Here we go. You might be able to just say, what does that look like? Doesn't seem to have worked. But maybe it's something having to do with touchable without feedback being not good with positioning. There we go. Instead, we're just wrapping it in a view, and that makes sense because really the text is the only thing that's relevant in this case. So well, we can extract this into its own styles down here in the style sheet. Edit button, position, salute, top, 0, right, 0, 0. We do want it centered vertically. Just replace these inline styles with styles. Edit button. Very nice. Okay, so it's centered the way we want it. We could put a little right spacing on there. I think we're providing 4 padding normally, which the absolute positioning is ignoring. Yeah, let's give it like similar size to the radio button. Yeah, styles are not going to be that great, you know, starting out, but we're going to improve on them over time. So maybe we need to make that, you know, position it with the outside one. Nest these view tags. So we're going to rename these a little bit. This will be like edit button position. And this will just be edit button. Yeah, something like that. And then we could say centered again, so that E is in the middle of it. All right, close enough. Yeah, pretty minimal styles here, but we've got an edit button. And when we click it, it should do something. On press. What should this do? Yes. If we go back to the action input, and this is kind of what I was alluding to with the state management here is not ideal because it's all encapsulated in this component. So it's not easily shareable. We're actually maintaining the list of actions here. It's an object keyed by the action ID, and it provides a title and a status, which right now can only be incomplete or complete. And when we add a new one, we're actually just like calculating a new sequential ID to use as the key. So I think we need to make our edit method go here. And to like provide an additional field. This on edit mode. And I'm already like feeling like this is not ideal, but again, I'm trying to build the MVP, so this code doesn't need to be spectacular. I'm just trying to validate a concept first. So new action object will be edit mode false. Then we'll create some sort of method, toggle editing for action. We'll accept the ID. We'll do an early return if ID is not found in action. And then we will set our action state based on the previous version of the state. It's going to be largely similar to the toggle completion, except we preserve the previous action state. For the ID we are looking for, we're going to keep this as is. Edit mode is basically just going to invert the existing edit mode value for that action. So we can pass this as a prop. We've got this here. And again, lambdas as a component prop handlers is not ideal, but we can refactor this later. Where were we? Yeah, so this edit button is going to call that method. So what we should see is this thing being editable. So maybe we can provide some indication that this action is editable or not. And I think the simplest way to do it is just to say, let's just log the entire actions list each time we re-render this. And if we look at our debugger, we should be able to see it here. Let's see. Cool. Edit mode is now true, and if we do this again, edit mode's false. So this is working the way we would expect. Now, if it's in edit mode, the text for this action needs to become an input field, similar to the text input here on the action input, which is being used up here. So we'd be replacing this. So we would say if the action ID that we're currently on and the action list is in edit mode, then we want to return this text input. And if it's not in edit mode, we're just going to render the text as usual. Got this text input. I want to import that. What props do we need? We need a value and an on-change handler. Interesting. Yeah, this is like not ideal because we're going to need to maintain like a draft version of this text. What could we do? Because we provide this. We know that to be true. Seeing a subtle shift, like a 1 pixel shift when we toggle between edit mode and not. Which is interesting. But the change handler is what will be tricky. I wonder if we only support like one edit mode at a time. I think it probably makes sense at this point to split. We have an actions list. Should get a delivery today. We've got our actions list component, but it's also doing it's rendering the list and it's rendering the item itself. So it probably makes sense to create an action item component. Can copy most of that over. Except I'm not sure what prop it's going to receive yet. It's going to receive an action, we know that. Just cut out a bunch of the extra stuff. Just say all right, we've got this. Or this interface too. We could do that later. Okay. Essentially, that means we're going to migrate the contents of this into that. So maybe I didn't need to delete all that stuff, but can import these again. We're missing these styles. I guess we do need a good chunk of these. All right. I think we're going to render an action item. We'll provide the action itself, which is at. And not ideal. I mean, the ID shouldn't be included in the object itself, but you know, we'll have to optimize that at a later point. The only styles we need here are for the container, so we can get rid of all of these. Get rid of all these imports. Gonna get rid of this interface for the time being. So this does need got the action ID. So we have action ID. We need to replace each time we're accessing the ID within the list with the action itself. And we need these functions to be passed along. So we can basically just do that and do that. So this should largely work the same. All right. Yeah, so we're still able to complete and edit. You know what? I think we've gone like a decent ways through. I'm gonna make some commits. Got all right, pod file. Install pod for async storage. What if we do on app.js? We just got rid of some, I think, comments that came with the initialization of the project, so we can just include that in there. I think normally I would have separated the initial getting that edit mode working into its own commit, but for right now I'm just going to say, and the whole act of splitting the action item into its own component is its own thing, but right now it's going to be a little bit of both. New separate action item into its component, add editing status to actions. All right, got that. And we'll do a push. I'm just pushing the master because it's just me, and this isn't live anywhere, so it's totally cool. So I'm about to run out of time, but I'm trying to find a good place to leave this off with. Yes, we have this action item, and I think here is where we can kind of use some state. So we can provide an initial value of the action's title. And, okay, maybe this will work. Let's see. On change text is the prompt that we're looking for here. So, action item on change text. Oops. Equals, so just set. Yeah. We can just call the setter directly. Let's see what happens. Oh. Okay. But we don't have a way to save this draft. So I think, we've made some progress here. We've added an edit button. We've added the ability to switch between just plain text and making it an editable text field. So I think next time we work on this, we'll probably work on connecting or figuring out some way to actually update the state of the action inputs to, to save the new title to update edit mode. And status doesn't change as a result of this. So maybe that's like pressing enter, or maybe the edit button turns into like a different button. We'll figure it out. It's all an experiment. So I'm going to leave a little comment for myself to remember for next time. Oops, that's not what I wanted. It's kind of nifty that it just generated those docs. I don't know what extension I'm using to do that, but it's not what I'm looking to do right now. Okay. So here we are able to click the edit button and make the action item a text input conditionally. What we need to do next is add the ability to save the edited action to the actions list state in action input, which granted is not a great name considering what this component has turned into. It's like a state management container for a lot of the application's actions data. But, that's a separate refactoring effort, which we can tackle in another session. But, yeah, this is pretty cool. We're making progress on this. Yeah. That's funny. Yeah, switching between draft and the task. Yeah, so a lot of things to consider, but it's a process. And over time, we will eventually finish this app. So, yeah, hope you enjoyed. I'll see you next time.